Hey, I'm Stephanie, and today I am battling my makeup monster. If you saw my recent new makeup madness video, then you'll know I am personally pretty tempted by some of the new releases out there. But I have found that the easiest way for me personally to avoid the temptation of over-purchasing makeup is to simply play with what I already have. Try to create some of the looks I would make with the new stuff with my old stuff. I'm still a little new to chatty get ready with me's, so if I forget to mention something that I'm applying and you're curious about it, just check the show notes because I'll list everything there. Now let's get started with some primers. As requested by my friends over on IG, in my stories, I will be applying the majority of makeup today from my Auditions box. If you're new here, that's just where I temporarily store makeup that's either been decluttered to me or has been sent to me in PR for testing so that I can see if it's worthy of joining the band, aka becoming part of my personal makeup collection. My Audition box doesn't contain a straight up face primer, so I just took this L'Oreal Prime Lab 24-hour matte setter out of my own collection because we will be testing a skin tint from the Audition box. And I want to see how it will interact with this because it's on the dewier side and I am oily combination skin. So I'm wondering if this could kind of mitigate a little bit of the dewiness. But everything else I'm using for priming has come to me either in PR or has been decluttered to me. For example, the Chouchou lip softening balm for some lip prep, the AQUAPHOR lip repair, which I'll be using as an under eye primer, and this BYNACHT Decolleté gel, which I'll be using on the neck and chest. So I recently reached 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube, and to celebrate, several of you suggested that I do a Q&A video. So during today's Get Ready With Me, I will be answering the questions I received from you here in my channel community tab and also over on IG. Ivy from the channel Better Than Basic Ivy wrote, "I'm dying to know more about your music career, how you started out and what your goals are." And that's the comment that got the most likes, so I guess we'll start there. When I'm not moonlighting as a mini micro nano content creator, I work as an independent musician and a voice actor. And like many independent artists, I wear a lot of hats and I do a lot of different jobs. I am a songwriter for myself and for other people. I work as a studio singer, a live performer of my own music, and I also work as a background singer in other bands, along with a bunch of other things. So how did I get started in music? Well, ever since I was a little kid, I was always drawing and painting and dancing and singing and writing songs and stories and poems because creativity is just always what has made me feel alive. And it was like that all through school, through college, and then all of a sudden I graduated and it was time to grow up. And I was like, nope, I need to keep singing and writing and drawing and painting. So I was like, I'm going to be an artiste. And the most organic thing for me to become was a singer-songwriter because I sang and wrote songs all the time. And if you think I'm exaggerating by saying all the time, just ask my very patient and lovely ex-roommates and their earplugs, because I'm pretty sure I was even singing in my sleep. But life in the US as a self-employed independent musician with no experience and no connections is expensive, especially if you're trying to be a responsible adult and have things like health insurance. And I just happened to be friends with a couple of German exchange students who were like, come to Germany with us. Our country has programs for artists that make things like healthcare affordable. So I sold everything I owned, which honestly wasn't much because I had just finished school, and I bought a plane ticket and left the country with one suitcase and a guitar to my name. Looking back, it was an incredibly naive, stupidly adventurous decision, but I was an artiste, and that's what artistes do. We follow affordable health insurance. And I'm still here, so apparently all's well that ends well. As for my goals, they're pretty simple. They used to be along the lines of fame and fortune, but then I saw that fame and fortune don't necessarily make people happy. So I readjusted my priorities, and now it's pretty much just to have fun being creative and work with people that I enjoy and respect. And I know that might not sound ambitious at first glance, but there's a quote out there somewhere that says something along the lines of, "The music business is a cruel and shallow money trench, a long plastic hallway where thieves and pimps run free and good men die like dogs." And there's also a negative side. And to be honest, that's not always all that far from the truth. So being able to keep that creative spark alive and find others who have managed to do the same can be quite the task. In a related question, Majestic Beast wrote, "You've mentioned traveling for your music. Can you share some fun facts about the places you've been to?" Sure. And while I do it, I will apply some of the Salt New York Best Case Concealer and Corrector. The concealer in the shade N11 and the corrector in the shade Peach. Fun fact number 1. If you happen to walk through a park in Sydney, Australia, and you are approached by wild cockatoos because there are parrots and exotic birds everywhere there, be careful because they are looking for food, and apparently human thumbnails look a lot like macadamia nuts to them. So they will use their very powerful, very pointy beaks to try to crack the nut, easily tearing through your entire thumbnail. So especially do not let them get too close if you have to play guitar that night. Fun fact number 2. Apparently, in Ireland, traditional Irish music bands can appear out of thin air. All you have to do is ask someone how to play the bodhrán, which is an Irish frame drum. I was in a tiny local music shop in the Irish countryside, and when I asked the clerk there how the drum was played, he was like, "Sure, I'll show you." And so I was assuming he was just going to take the drum and show me. But no, he literally ran out of the store, across the street to a little cafe where he gathered a waitress. Then he went down the street to the optometrist and got someone from there. And then he got the neighboring shop owner, and they all had musical instruments and just started playing the most magical traditional music I had ever heard right there on the sidewalk in front of the music shop. And then they were like, "Now it's your turn." And I was like, "But I don't know how to play the bodhrán." And they're like, "This is how you learn." So I started playing a random song with 3 strangers on a random street in the Irish countryside. And that's how I started learning how to play the bodhrán. Fun fact number 3. When you're performing in a different city or sometimes even a different country every night, it can get kind of hard to know where you are after a while. But I can usually at least tell the region of the world that I'm performing in based on how the audience claps along. In English-speaking countries, a lot of people will clap on the backbeat, so the 2 and the 4. But in German-speaking countries, they manage to make every single song sound like a march by clapping on the 1 and the 3. It throws me off every time. Give Life Meaning asked, what are your favorite countries and countries you want to visit? Well, both the US and Germany feel like home, so they both have a special place in my heart for that reason. Canada has always treated me really well. A lot of my favorite musicians and colleagues live there and are from there, plus they have some beautiful landscapes. The fjords of Norway were gorgeous, but they never did give me Kaki's fjord cheeks that Kaki Review's Beauty always talked about. The people that I worked with in Lebanon were amazing. They might have been the most creative, resourceful team that I have ever worked with. Australia was wild. My favorite part, other than the people, was probably the beaches, although the thumb-eating cockatoos were cool too. Italy was beautiful. Honestly, this is just a really hard question because it's incredibly hard to pick favorites. Every place has something to offer. Now it is time for some foundation, and I will be applying the Salt New York Sneaky Balm in the shade N11. Blueberry Muffin requested tips for someone learning guitar. I think I'll just share my favorite one. The best tip I ever got while I was learning guitar was from my mother. She took away all the guitar picks in the house, even the ones I was trying to hide, because she wanted to force me to learn how to fingerpick. And at first, that made everything so much harder, but it ultimately made me so much better because the chords that my left hand was playing had to be so much cleaner, and the fingers of my right hand learned to intuitively find each string. So once I got the guitar picks back, I could do fancier stuff. Joanne wrote, if you feel comfortable sharing, where are you from? Where do you live now? And is there any other place you have lived or traveled? Are there any interesting differences? Are there places you wish you could spend more time in, and why? I am originally from New England, which is in the northeastern part of the United States, and I now live in Germany, and those are the only 2 regions I've ever lived in. But I have performed in North America and Europe and Asia and Australia and the Middle East. Are there interesting differences? Always. Everywhere has its own charm. But I will limit my answers to Germany and the US because those are the places where I've spent the most time. The biggest difference, aside from the language, is definitely the people, or let's say the culture. It's always risky to make sweeping generalizations about a culture because each individual is always so different. And when it comes down to it, at our core, humans are pretty much the same everywhere you go. And if a stranger were to point to me and go, "Oh, you're an American. I wouldn't even want to know what they associate with that title because I know how different each individual American I know is. So I don't want to do that to other people. But for the sake of answering the question, based on my anecdotal experiences and very generally speaking, I miss the lightheartedness of casual social interactions in the US. But I also really value how seriously Germans tend to take their relationships. What I mean by that is, in my experience with people in the US, we will often be friendly to each other, even if we don't intend to be friends. And that's not necessarily us being fake or trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes, although a lot of Germans have told me that those types of interactions with Americans feel very superficial to them, almost like lies. But I think that's only because maybe those particular Germans don't understand the cultural contract that Americans have with each other, because that's kind of what culture is. It's an unspoken contract, and the contracts are different depending on the culture that you grow up in. And I think for the most part in the US, most people are aware that things like small talk and smiling at strangers is just a social ritual to lighten the mood. We understand that the connection isn't intended to be deep. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend smiling at a German, for example, in a grocery store, or trying to make small talk with them, because you would just be ambushing them with an unexpected interaction, and they would probably go into like fight or flight mode. Germans, in my experience, kind of seem to collapse into their own worlds when they're out and about. Like, they just don't have as many casual social interactions as Americans do. Now I'm going to apply some contour with the Kevyn Aucoin contrast stick in the shade Shape. But once you become friends with a German, they will lay down their life for you. It's almost like they're culturally just more aware of how naturally energy intensive deep relationships can be. So they just don't even bother to waste energy on acquaintances. They just reserve it for their people. But like I said, there are people in both cultures who fall completely outside of that. I know Americans who hate small talk, and I know some very gregarious Germans. I do feel like I'm at home in both worlds now, although it does take some adjustment every time I go back to the US or I return to Germany. I always need a little bit of buffer time to kind of recalibrate. Zach asked, what inspired you to start this channel? And while I answer that, I will pluck another indie brand from my audition box. This time I will be applying the Skin Spark blush in the shade Evaporate from the brand Phytosurgence. And this I picked specifically, this is like the first item we're going to look at today that's emulating a look that I would create with the new makeup on the market. I am really interested in the YSL blush Nocturnal Nude, but I think this Phytosurgence blush could actually give me a very similar look, so we're going to try it on for size today. I initially started this channel as an attempt to force myself to find my own sense of style. When I perform with various bands, their style dictates what I wear. Plus, in those cases, I'm normally traveling with a large team, so my only job is to show up and sing. So the wardrobe I'm wearing on stage is literally just for the performance and nothing else. But when it came to my own music, I didn't know exactly how I should dress myself. I usually just wore black and denim and very hardy fabrics because when I tour alone, I am my own road manager and driver and roadie, so I usually have a lot of heavy lifting to do while wearing my stage clothes. If you want to see how unluxurious touring as a solo indie artist can be, I'll link a very old vlog below. But basically, I just wanted to find a style that would better represent me as an artist, and I thought that doing it publicly would hold me accountable. But I started that endeavor at the very beginning of 2020, the year everyone's best laid plans fell apart. The world has since changed. I do a lot more studio work now. Plus, perimenopause is just completely changing everything about my body, including its shape. So I've kind of put clothing on the back burner for now. And I've switched to makeup and beauty instead, mostly for fun, because I don't have any friends close by who are as into makeup as I am, and I just wanted to hang out with other people who understood my obsession. I am going to set this cream blush with a powder blush that I think might also satisfy my craving for new blushes, but I want to finish applying my creams first. And the next thing is this Fenty Beauty Cheeks Out bronzer in the shade Butta Biscuit. Good Enough Accompanies wrote, given your channel name of Style Stumbler, are there any stumbles that have stood out to you as being pivotal in your evolution? Yes, I think most of my life is pretty much defined by stumbling. If I had lived my life according to the plan that I had had for myself when I was 18, which wasn't a bad plan, it was just a very safe, reliable, run-of-the-mill, what most people do kind of plan, then I would have been in a very different place, living a very different life right now. And I think that many aspects of my life would probably be easier, but I don't think that I would have been as happy, and I am absolutely certain that I would have had regrets. Because that plan didn't allow any room for stumbling. But every time I make a mistake, or even just a choice that people are like, I really wouldn't do that if I were you, in the worst case scenario, I've learned important lessons and I've discovered more about who I am. And in the best case scenarios, I have stumbled into amazing opportunities. I stumbled into being a background singer and I got to see the world. I stumbled into voice acting and was able to keep working as a performer despite the fact that every venue on the planet closed for almost a year. I stumbled into a makeup obsession that, had it gone unchecked, could have broken my bank account, but I've managed to turn that into a learning experience and a YouTube channel where I can connect with people. In a related question, Mary wrote, I love your phrase of stumbling as a way of moving forward. How did you come up with it? Did you stumble upon it? Yep, like pretty much everything else. I did. I feel like that's just kind of the theme of my life. And I used to be ashamed of the fact that I could never seem to just make the same choices as everybody else. Like, why can't I just choose a normal profession with a steady paycheck? Why can't I just say yes when a major label offers me a contract? Why can't I just want what everybody else wants? And when you can't define yourself or your success on the measures that society uses, you always kind of feel like you're stumbling, so it's easy to feel like a failure. But that's just because the same standards don't apply, because you're not taking the same road as everyone else. When you forge your own path, you're inevitably going to trip and fall on all the roots and rocks in the way because they are everywhere. But sometimes when you stumble, that perspective of looking at things from rock bottom shows you a path that you otherwise never would have found. And other times you get really lucky and you stumble forward into something great. So I guess that's just the energy that I wanted people send back out into the world with after they've watched one of my videos. Now it's time to powder, and I have plucked this Fenty Beauty Pro Filt'r Instant Retouch Setting Powder in the shade Butter out of my audition box, and I would like to compare this. I want to see how blurring it is, because this claims to be blurring, and this is the Givenchy Original Prisme Libre formula, and it's my most blurring powder, so I want to see how they compare. We'll do the Fenty on this side, the Givenchy on this side, and then take a look. ANGEC 6983 wrote, has the Adagio tempo spilled over into any other aspects of your life? If so, I would be interested to hear any insights you might like to offer. Yes, definitely. Slowing down the tempo of my beauty purchases has definitely had an effect on other things in my life. I think it started with project panning. During my no-buy year and my first year of Adagio beauty or slow shopping, I was very actively project panning cosmetics. But then I realized that I was passively starting to do that with items in my pantry too. For example, I had collected quite a range of different teas, and one day I realized that I was focusing on certain teas more methodically to move them out of the pantry, and then I wasn't replacing them with new tea, and that has since expanded to my entire home, even to my car. I had owned my car for 25 years when it finally decided that it wasn't going to drive anymore. And I decided not to get a new car. I don't know if this choice is going to be permanent. It sounds very extreme for an American to give up their car because we kind of have to drive everywhere to get anywhere in the country. But in Europe, it's a little bit easier to get by without a car just because public transport is so much more accessible and it goes so many more places. And for now, it's working out really well because I'm either working in the studio or I'm being flown somewhere by someone else. So I don't need to drive anywhere. But if I wanted to go tour on my own again, I would definitely need a car. So we'll see how long that decision lasts. But I think actively trying to cultivate an Adagio attitude has also affected me on a broader level, because I've seen just how much simpler it can be to live with less. With lower bills, with less clutter, less of a need for newness, and the space that gives me makes more room and more time for the people and activities that are really important to me. So it's like the longer I do it, the deeper I want to go into it. When I look in my normal mirrors, I feel like the Givenchy side looks a little bit more filtered. I see less of the bumps under my eyes. I see less of the texture of my pores. It's just more blurred on this side than the Fenty side. But I do feel like the fine lines are a little bit less prominent on this side. But when I look in the magnifying mirror, I think I can see why. And that's because the Fenty powder is already starting to lose its integrity. When I first applied it, I felt like it did a good job of mattifying and setting everything, but my oils are already starting to kind of shine through. And I want a powder to last longer than that. I don't think this would last on me all day. The several times that I've tried it now, I've gotten the same results. I think it's a good powder. I just don't think it's made for my oily skin, and I don't think it's as blurring as the Givenchy. The eyeshadows I plucked out of the audition box today are also intended to help me resist buying some of the new palettes out there on the market. Those new limited edition Charlotte Tilbury 9-pan palettes, the Natasha Denona Bloom palette, those have caught my eye repeatedly, and I want to avoid purchasing them. So I decided I would pull this Danessa Myricks Groundwork Bloom in Romance out of my box, because I received this as a gift for Christmas, along with the Charlotte Tilbury Pop Shot in the color Rose Gold. And I think I can use these two palettes to create the same look I would have done with one of the Charlotte Tilbury palettes or the Natasha Denona Bloom palette. And while I apply this, I will answer a question from Joanne, which is, some of your videos do a really good job of following the scientific method, good research, use of controls, etc. What is your science background? The answer to that is little to none. I use the Star Talk podcast to fall asleep when I have insomnia. No, I studied linguistics in college, and I did participate in some of the lab experiments and things, but I wouldn't say I have a whole lot of experience. But I did almost study meteorology in college, and so I was very into science when I was in high school. So I guess that gave me enough of a basic respect for the scientific method. Kaito0047 wrote, "Congratulations! Thank you. Would you ever go on a brand trip? Why or why not?" I guess I would consider it, but it would depend on a lot of things, like what brand is it? What are the brand's expectations? What did they expect to get out of that trip? Would it benefit my audience in any way? Am I generally interested in the brand, and does it align with what I do? I haven't been offered any brand trips, but I have been getting more and more offers for things like PR and sponsorships. And so far, I've said no to a bunch of the PR just because I don't want to get overwhelmed. And I've said no to all of the sponsorships. And it's not because I'm against sponsored videos. I think they can potentially be a win-win-win situation. If I wholeheartedly believe in a product because it works so well for me that I think my audience could benefit from knowing more about it, then maybe I would consider it. Ellie from Down the Beauty Hole wrote, "Congratulations, Stephanie." Thank you. I'm wondering how you feel about the different social media platforms. While I answer this question, I will apply the Rose Gold Pop Shot from Charlotte Tilbury. I personally just like long-form content the best because I enjoy nuance. And I feel like the only way to get a nuanced perspective on anything in life is to spend time with the subject. And you can only really do that in long-form content. It's impossible to go into a lot of depth in a minute or two. So YouTube is my personal favorite platform just because it's the easiest place to access long-form content. I personally haven't really been on Facebook in years. I only really go there if an external link pops me over there now. I was never really a fan of Twitter. I'm still not a fan of X, and I don't go on Threads all that much either. I was initially really drawn to Instagram for the pictures because I feel like people were getting pretty artsy there for a while, but now it's kind of turned into TikTok Junior, and I feel like the platform is just constantly pushing Reels. And Reels don't necessarily fit into my Adagio tempo. And maybe that's another way that this whole project has influenced me. I like slower media that gives me more time to digest it. TikTok is just a little too much for me. It's too easy to get sucked into a time vortex of meaningless nonsense over there, so I don't tend to interact with it very much. And I often take social media breaks just because it gets to be too much for me. It's just more than my human brain has evolved to handle. The Etherny had some rapid fire questions, so I will do a lightning round where I answer all of them and just apply a bunch of products. I'm going to start with this Sephora Colorful Wink It Felt Liner. It's the waterproof version. I've been having a lot of issues trying to find a good brown liquid liner lately, and the ones that I had were just not working at all for me. And this was like on clearance. It was a super deal. So I was just like, well, I'll try that one. And it's a disaster. On my oily eyelids, it just smears everywhere. If you saw my recent YSL loose powder testing video, this is what I was wearing in all the wear tests. And by the end of the day, it was just always everywhere. So this also a fail. I'm going to need to try something else. Let's get back to the Etherny's questions. What is your favorite kind of day? Favorite movie ever? Favorite song at the moment? I'm glad you said at the moment because it's constantly changing. And how did you get into makeup? So my favorite kind of day is a lazy summer day on a secluded beach. That is always my ideal. What is my favorite movie ever? I guess I would go with my favorite from high school because it's been one of my favorites for the longest period of time, and that would be Monty Python and the Holy Grail. My favorite song at the moment, that always depends on my mood. And at the moment, I'm tired and in the mood for a lullaby. So I might say Howdy, Howdy with Gillian Welch and David Rawlings. When they harmonize, it's just so earthy. It's very grounding. I'll link it in the show notes in case you need a lullaby. I also plucked this powder blush out of my Auditions box. It is the Pat McGrath Labs Mini Divine Blush in the shade Paradise Venus. And I feel like this could also potentially satiate my urge for that new YSL blush in Nocturnal Nude. We'll see. I'm going to apply it now. So the last question, how did I get into makeup? I was a late bloomer. I didn't touch the stuff in middle school or high school or even college. And it was all because of a great conversation I had with my mom when I was like 5. I remember standing next to her and watching her apply makeup in the mirror, and she never wore a ton of makeup, but she almost always wore the basics. And I said something like, "Oh, Mom, you look so pretty. When will I learn how to put on makeup?" And she just said I should wait as long as possible to start wearing makeup because once she started wearing it, she got used to how she looked when she wore it. And then at some point, she just felt like she could never leave the house without it. And as a 5-year-old, that sounded like a jail sentence to me. I was like, what? I won't just be able to run out the back door and climb a tree? I'll have to put makeup on first? So I made the decision then and there that I would never get used to wearing makeup because I didn't want to ever feel trapped by it. I just wiped off the EADEM lip balm because I only ever use that as a prep step. It has lactic acid in it, which is a bit much for my sensitive lips if I leave it on for too long, but I do like the softening effect it has. So it's been on for long enough, and now I'm gonna put on a different lip balm. In my new makeup video, I had mentioned I'm in the market for a new luxury lip balm because my old favorite is almost gone. So I saw a couple that caught my eye on the market, but then Queen Musia sent me a couple of theirs, and I thought I would put one of them on today. I really liked the lipstick that they came out with last year, and so I'm hoping that I will like the lip balms as much, if not more, because I'm more of a lip balm girl. So I'm gonna put on the shade Desert Flower. And this has like a very faint vanilla smell, and let's see how this one looks. Very sheer, very comfortable, very simple. No plumping things in it, no pH adjusting whatevers. I think it looks really nice on its own, but I just think the intensity of the look needs a little bit more color on the lips. So I'm gonna do that with a lip liner. It was when I decided to become a musician that I first started getting into makeup, and I only bought the basics: a brow pencil, a concealer, a lip liner, and a mascara. Just the things that would define my face on stage. And I think that year my mom got me like an eyeliner and a bronzer and maybe replenished my mascara for Christmas. And that was my entire makeup collection for years. And I only ever wore makeup on stage or for things like auditions. Then I had a horrible experience with a TV studio makeup artist during my first television appearance. That's a story for another day, but my makeup was so bad that I was like, I need to learn how to do this myself. And that is when my sister-in-law took me to an Ulta for the very first time. And I was like, what is this place? That is where I met my first eyeshadow palette, and we all know the story from there. But at least I would still be able to look my 5-year-old self in the eye and honestly tell her that I have never felt trapped by makeup. And if I want to run out of the house and climb a tree, I can still just do that. If you'd like to hear a song that reminds me of that phase of my childhood, it's not one of mine. It's just a very simple cover version that I did, but it's a really bittersweet reflection on growing up, and I'll link that right here. Thank you so much for 10,000 subscribers. I am so glad you're here. I hope you'll say hi in the comments, give me a thumbs up, all that jazz. But even if you don't, I hope you have a great week and we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.